Hello and welcome to the Remind Podcast, the podcast where we get inside the real estate entrepreneur's mind. My name is Harrison Smith. I'm the director of growth with Matea Group, based here in Maine and expanding throughout New England. And I'm joined today by Jeff Lee. How you doing, Jeff?
Hey, Harrison, I'm doing well. How are you?
Great, great. Happy to have you here. Looking forward to talking about you and getting into your business.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So let's start off with, for those that don't know you, why don't you tell people a little bit about yourself?
My name is Jeffrey Lee. I live in Portland, Maine. I'm the owner of the Jeff Lee Agency with Farmers Insurance. Originally grew up in California, went to college in Maryland, spent time all over the East Coast. Started my sales career way back when in New York City. And I've got a daughter. Love to get outside like any good Mainer, and very into art and the languages.
Awesome. So well-rounded and
Try,
well-traveled.
try, yeah.
Good. So you mentioned you're the owner of the Jeff Lee Agency. With Farmers Insurance, you're in the insurance space. What we find is a lot of people that we talk to didn't necessarily start in the industry that they're growing inside of. So how about for you? What is your story? Did you start in insurance? Did you plan to get into insurance? How'd you end up there?
Yeah, I'm not sure anybody ever plans to get into insurance. um, I certainly did not. I got I have a degree in classics of all things, so philosophy, languages, arts, etc. Um, Originally planned to get into the writing field. Ended up in New York City, where an agent was reading my first novel.
Wow.
Was tired of waiting tables and didn't want to be a starving artist trying to scrape by in New York City. So I took a job as an admin at a headhunting firm way back when, and sort of cut my teeth in sales on that. Showed an aptitude for it. 5 years later, I was running the division, was recruiting tax and accounting professionals in Manhattan. My biggest clients were a lot of the investment banks. So come 2009, when that whole thing, tanked, I ended up relocating back home to the West Coast and wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. The economy was not fantastic, so weren't a lot of job opportunities. Talked to a recruiter, ironically enough, from Farmers Insurance, and ended up opening an agency out there about 12 years ago. When my daughter was born, we came back to Maine because my wife wanted to raise children in Maine, like any good Mainer would.
Good call.
Absolutely, especially versus Southern California.
For sure.
I couldn't agree more with her. So
Yep.
at the time, farmers didn't have a presence east of the Mississippi. So I joined up with an all-state agency and was there for about 9 years before just making the transition back to farmers a couple months ago. They came looking for me when they expanded into New England, and I was honored to be the first new agency of theirs representing the brand in their push into New England.
Yeah, that's awesome how it comes full circle. You start with farmers, you have to move away from them because you geographically move when they're not there. And then all of a sudden, when they come back around, here you are ready to capture the opportunity now in Maine with the same group you started with.
Yeah, the universe. It was one of those things where the universe just really lined up and showed me a path.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you're in New York City when the Great Recession, the economic meltdown happens. What was it like being really at the epicenter of all that?
Oh man, I was young too. I was making good money. I was in my mid-20s at the time, and I remember a lot of like older guys who had been in the industry for a while who were really keeping their finger on the pulse of what was going on in the economy. They started telling me back in '08 like to start saving my money and like, you know, putting it under the mattress, getting ready for, rainy days ahead basically. I did not listen to them, of course. But no, man, it was rough. That staffing firm was just like moving right along, raking it in, doing very well. Probably had about 100 people there in various divisions.
Well,
By the time I left, like my division went from 7 people to two, just myself and one other guy working under me.
wow.
And that was about what we saw across the board. Out of like 100-person firm, they probably were down to something in the 30s by the time I left. Um, it was a disaster for that industry too, because as those clients either just disappeared entirely The remaining ones were pinching pennies, and they certainly weren't paying an outside firm to do their hiring, if they were even hiring at all. So it was bloody. It was not pretty.
Wow. And I love your classics background because believe it or not, I was a finance and accounting major with a minor in philosophy. I'm fascinated by those thinkers and the philosophers of those various eras because what I find so interesting is that when you're in a world like ours that is so kind of linear, so binary, it's so numbers driven and black or white. I love the outside the box thinking and the kind of the far out sometimes crazy thinking that the philosophers would bring to you. And I actually feel like I troubleshoot and solve problems better because I'm not coming at it from the same lens that I would based on just traditional training. Do you find the same thing?
Oh, 100%. Like my I love my education. Not that it taught me anything, like tangible as far as sales or business goes, but it's exactly that component that you're talking about, that critical thinking piece, the ability to think outside the box, to put myself in somebody else's shoes, to, tackle a problem not based on like my first perspective of it, but to try to get multiple perspectives on it and think it through. I owe my whole career to that sort of background. Definitely.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating to see just the different ways you can approach a problem, think through a problem, but also just sometimes the depth of the solution requires you to go outside of what would be considered normal in your industry or your area. And having that, sometimes bizarre background to lean on, I find helpful. So it's cool.
Absolutely. And I think communication too, like has a lot to do with philosophy, and communication are more intertwined than most people would think just on the face of it.
Yeah. No, that's a great point too. So you head to California, you meet these people from farmers, you open up an agency. At the time, was it like, yes, I'm going to be an insurance salesman? Or was it like, well, this is going to be good enough for now?
It started out as the latter, where this is going to be good enough for now. Once I got a feel for it though, I really came to enjoy like being a trusted advisor for people in an industry that most consumers really don't understand and don't want to understand. It's very
Sure.
dry. It's not the most fun, it's not like selling a house where you can see and touch it, or a car, like something fun, something colorful. It's very dry. It's absolutely necessary, and most people don't understand it at all. And also, there's also the stigma of, you're required to carry it, in most places, whether it's because you drive a car, because you own a home with a mortgage. So there's the component too of, some authority is telling you, you have to carry this, you have to pay
Mhm.
for it. And it's something you can't see or touch unless like something goes wrong. I enjoyed being an advisor to people and educating them on, on their coverages, finding them the best pricing. There are unfortunately a lot of bad apples that sort of ruin the bunch. And insurance salesmen get the stereotype of being like used car salesmen or something.
Mhm.
Which is probably also not a fair tip to used car salesmen, because again, like, you've got
Yeah.
good salespeople and, not so reputable salespeople. But I've always really enjoyed not overselling my clients' coverage and not underselling the coverage. Like I take the time to understand their needs and drill down on exactly what they would need insurance product wise if they woke up that day and had like a worst case life changing situation. Those are the conversations I have with folks. It's really about like, what do you have to lose? And let's cover exactly that. No more, no less. The insurance industry, like marketing wise, has done people a real disservice by like in the last 20 years or so, by telling consumers that the best policy is the cheapest policy, which is absolutely not true. I'm always going to try to find a happy marriage between the two for my clients. Like I want my clients to get the cheapest price they can, but I'm also never going to sell something to somebody that's going to leave them in the lurch if they need it.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great point. It's not necessarily, the industry's been in this race to the bottom for a long time about low prices, lowest price, and all these
Mhm.
savings. But really, the question is, do I have the right stuff? Like, if something happens, am I covered? And we were talking about that on the radio show this week, and I actually apologized to you on the air because I had said, insurance is that one game like we know we're going to lose because we hope we pay for this product and never need it.
Mhm.
But when we do need it, and we need it to be right, and we need it to be what is gonna protect us at the time, and it's really important that you have that person that is putting you into the right products, the right coverages, so when that worst case scenario happens like you described, they're not worried about what's going to happen. They know.
Yeah, and sadly, that's not something the 1-800 number companies are really doing
Right.
these days. They are gonna sell you the if you go to one of those companies, you call up a 1-800 number, they're gonna ask, "Well, what do you want?" If you say, "Well, I want to pay the least money possible," which is what almost anybody's gonna say, they will sell you something that is the least money possible. They're not going to say, "Well, how much equity do you have in your home? What's your income? Like, do you have children? Are you saving for college for them?" They're not going to get to know a client's sort of risk profile and what they have to lose. They will literally, I mean, they'll get it done in 15 minutes and they may save you 15%, but that's going to be a drop in the bucket if your house burns down and you're out six figures on it.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. And I love that you call it being a trusted advisor. So when somebody calls you, Jeff, and says, "Hey, here's my situation. I need, coverage for these various things. What are you going to do to help me?" How do you describe to people what being a trusted advisor to them is?
Well, I really just kind of take them through the process. We'll get to know each other a little bit. Um, I'll determine what type of cars they have, what type of house they have, and ask a few questions without drilling. I'm not a financial advisor. I don't need
Mhm.
like all of the nitty gritty details, but in about 5 to 10 minutes, I can determine, what a person's maximum like loss would be if they had, an awful life changing kind of situation and an attorney tried to pursue them for everything they were worth. It doesn't take too long to get into that. And also, we round up on things. I don't need to know the exact dollar amount of what somebody has to lose. Like as long as it's to the nearest, 100,000, like then we can basically cover them for whatever it is.
Yeah, right. What do you have? What do you need? What are your biggest fears? And let's put a
Mhm.
package together that solves for that.
Exactly.
Great. Okay, so you're out in California, you come to Maine, you're working as an agent. The farmer's opportunity comes back up, and you're like, okay, great, let's start up another agency. What is that like? Basically, in theory, starting over again in a new market. What's that like when you've got an existing business in one area, you relocate, and you start over again? What were the keys to you getting going again in Maine?
Just meeting the right people. I mean, a lot of insurance sales are done via phone, which, it's necessary. It's an important component, but I've always liked getting out and meeting people. I built my career on networking with realtors and mortgage lenders, getting to know them, like showing them how I could help their clients, helping their transactions go more smoothly. You would be surprised, like, again, if a client calls a 1-800 number to get a home quote or a home policy when they're buying a house, sometimes it can take days or weeks for them to even get that policy.
Mm,
Meanwhile, their loan officer is waiting for proof of insurance to get them to, so they can close on the house. Like,
yep.
and the loan officer is pulling their hair out, the client's pulling their hair out. So I've made myself a resource for realtors and lenders. I always get their clients to the table, like on time with proof of insurance in hand, at a great price. And the client understands the coverage and they have the right coverage. So, um, in our little community, that means a lot to folks, that their clients are taken well taken care of. Um, so I sort of I built a network around that and have been doing that for a number of years. So that actually has really, really given my new business with farmers a boost. I really was able to hit the ground running day one because of support from all of my local connections and their clientele.
Yeah, I think that's an important point where I think a lot of us, to your point earlier, have been kind of desensitized to insurance because I can call the 800 number. I can go to, whatever website and just punch in a few things and get insurance spit back at me. But I don't know who's behind that. Like, who do I call when there's a problem? What do I do? And, for you, it's the old school relationship building. It's, I want people to know who I am, what I do, and how to find me because I'm here to help you.
Absolutely. It's much easier to, to create relationships with folks who need my help and whose clients need my help. And get, have business come in that way than try to cold call like a list of 100 people.
Yeah, people want to do business with people they know, like, or trust, or the person referring them knows, likes, and trusts because you get that immediate credibility, but also that handoff's a lot easier.
Yeah, and again, and that goes to what I really like about the job and what we were talking about previously, being a trusted advisor, not only to clientele, but to, realtors, lenders, I get all kinds of insurance questions, about transactions that don't necessarily, they might not lead to a sale like that day or that week. But it's really just forming that relationship. And I love helping. I love when a realtor comes to me and says, oh, my client is purchasing a house. It's got asbestos like siding and their insurer won't handle it and says no one in Maine can do it. And I can, there's any number of situations like that where I can provide advice to a realtor, whether or not that might net me a sale that day. Like, I enjoy being an advisor in those situations, and helping other people make money too.
Yeah, it goes back to the old saying, your value is determined by the problems you solve. And in some cases, you're helping people solve a problem that may not do anything for you. You may actually be helping them get something right, or get an opinion that doesn't lead to a sale for you. But by adding that value and helping them, that has a way of always coming back around.
Oh, absolutely. I've seen that time and time again in my career, where I might, help a realtor with something and not hear from them for another year and a half. And then all of a sudden they have, some hiccup with their own insurance and they want to quote, or they've got clientele that need my help. It's just, yeah, I mean, always, it's a two-way street. So, um, just keeping those relationships open, running all the time, and helping folks out.
Great. So let's dive into farmers a little bit. So you were with farmers, you came to Maine, you weren't with farmers, and the opportunity to go back to farmers came back. What attracted you to farmers? What makes farmers different?
Well, I'm not going to lie. I love the rates because, we always want to insure people fully for what they need, like I was saying, but price is important to people. And if I can do the same thing at farmers that I could do previously for 75% of the price, that's a huge win for me. That's just more clientele that will join, the brand. Um, I enjoy, also the fact that, like, farmers has a very wide sort of market, more than I've seen with other standard carriers for what they will write and what they won't. We can definitely look at a lot of commercial insurance that I couldn't elsewhere with other captive agencies. And just I mean, having met the leadership, for the brand in New England, I really took to them. The main sales leader is a, former agent himself in this same market. So I can go to somebody who understands the Maine market, who understands pricing, who understands coverages, who even understands Maine consumers,
Yeah.
insurance consumers. And having somebody like that, he's at the corporate level, but only nominally. I mean, he's a Mainer, like, he understands the market. It's great to have somebody like that on my side who is, at the quote unquote corporate level.
Yeah, and that's important because what we find a lot of times with these large, these national carriers is that you call them to get insurance from Maine, and half of them don't even know where Maine is on a map. And then when you're talking about what your needs are, they're like, "Well, do you get snow? Well, do you know where Maine is?"
I've had other carriers who, they'll go out to inspect a new house policy, because all home policies get inspected by the carrier just to make sure that they're insuring it properly and it's not falling over. And I've worked with other carriers who will go out in December or something and say, "Oh, this roof doesn't look that great. You need to fix this within a month." And I'll try to explain to them, well, we're in Maine, like, roofers aren't going up there in January.
No.
Like, and they'll stick by those guidelines because that's what the underwriting guideline written by somebody in, Nevada says, or something like that. That level of disconnect is pretty common with large carriers. I have not found that with farmers so far. They are very, and having just broken into this market, they rely on their agents, their new agents, and like their leadership, like the fellow I was just mentioning, who's from this market, like, to sort of guide them on what does and does not make sense, in New England. Which, so I love being on the ground floor of that, being able to sort of help dictate what, common sense wise works for insurance consumers in Maine.
Yeah, that's interesting. I like the breakdown of what farmers offers because in this space, you generally go one of two ways. You're either a captive agent with somebody, you're selling their particular product, or you go become a broker and you sell everybody's product. But really, with
Right.
farmers, they almost merge it where you don't have to go be a broker because farmers will bring you the whole portfolio. You can just sell under their banner and then life is easy.
Yeah, their in-house brokerage, is fantastic from what I've seen so far. That was one of the big reasons I wanted to come over.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. So Jeff Lee Agency, relatively new. You're in that team building phase, beginning to recruit talent and build the team around you. Any lessons learned so far on the team building front?
I've been lucky. I've worked in insurance for some time in Maine. I have trained a lot of folks, have a lot of agents that I know and trust who have moved on to other companies. I've been lucky. My team currently is staffed by handpicked by me by people who I've trained myself and who have some years of experience. That's been great so far. No hurdles yet. I have run into in the past. Yeah, I would say the biggest hurdle with staffing in an insurance agency is expectations. I always try to be honest with people when they come in. It's not an easy industry to learn. It's not an easy industry to kind of get your footing in. It's like being a realtor in a middling or down market. Like it's not, there's a lot to learn. You're not going to have immediate you're not going to make six figures in your first year. Like you got to sort of learn the ropes, make your mistakes, take your lumps and like survive and like just push through it to get to the next level. um, that would be the main hurdle that I have run into with staffing and insurance in the past is people coming in with too high of expectations, whether I was able to temper them or not, and getting burnt out in their first 6 to 12 months. I would say like the attrition rate for new insurance agents is almost all in the first year.
Yeah, which is very similar to what we see on the agency side with real estate agents, insurance agents. They come in expecting, on the real estate side at least, they expect to come in and be one of those HGTV agents with the Lamborghini and the
Right,
tailored
right,
suits, a
exactly.
year down the road, and they can't figure out why that hasn't happened.
Right.
This
It's
is
all
a
about
long.
perseverance.
Well, exactly, 100%. It's about perseverance, but it's also about being able to deal with the fact that some of the gratification from this business, it comes in the long term. It's planting
Yep.
seeds today that'll take care of you down the road and playing that long game of relationships. Not everybody has the ability to withstand that or the patience for it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So in any sales position, we generally see similar dynamics in the fact that everybody wants to get going right now, but very few people are willing to invest in the energy that they need to put out right now to create that benefit long term.
Right. Yeah, exactly the same.
Awesome. So when you look back at your whole journey, what do you see as the most important aspect to your success? Is there a habit, a trait, a mentor, a mindset? What do you attribute to being able to grow in this business and also open up your own agency and build your own?
Ooh, that's a good question, Harrison. There's so many different answers that come to mind. I would say the big ones are consistency.
Hmm.
Um, it's like sort of goes back to what we were saying just now about, staffing and people new to the industry. You got to show up. You got to show up and be ready to work and to take your lumps if that's what it is. Like, not every day is going to be a huge success in either of our industries. I mean, there's even the best of us, the most veteran agents. Like, we're not always gonna have great days. So I would say consistency and probably like for an insurance agent, honesty to get away from that stigma of,
Hmm.
like agents trying to oversell coverage, not explain things properly. I really do my best to insure every single client I get as though it were myself or like my mom, a family
Hmm.
member or a friend. Like I insure all of these people exactly the way I would insure somebody like in my personal life. Like, and I always insure people, um, with the thought in mind that they're going to need the insurance. That's a big one for insurance too, because that's also what gives insurance agents a bad name. They might skimp on coverage to make the price lower so they can get a sale, but then that person might actually need their insurance. Are they going to need the full extent of their insurance? Probably not. So a lot of agents kind of play the odds of like, you know, chances are this person's not going to need, their full, 100,000, 500,000, what million, whatever it may be of coverage, because the person probably isn't. I don't like to play those odds because I've done this long enough to know like it's always the client that you don't think is going to have a major issue that has a major issue. Murphy's Law certainly applies to insurance. So I insure everybody as though they're a friend or family member or myself. And I insure everybody as though they're going to wake up tomorrow and have like a life-changing car accident or house fire or something so that
Yeah.
they are fully covered no matter what might happen.
Yeah, exactly. Treat others as you'd want to be treated. and provide them the coverage and service that you'd expect to get so that they can sleep at night and they're not worried about, did Jeff take care of me? Because the one thing I'm sure you never want is that call of, I've got a claim. I don't have enough coverage. What'd you do?
Right. And luckily, that has never happened to me. I don't ever like when a client's in a bad spot, but I do love if somebody calls me and they've had a major loss. I like to be that guy that says, we've got you. Like,
Yep.
you can rest easy. This is in process. You're going to be okay.
Yeah. Because at that moment, that's all that person wants to hear is that it's going to be all right. I got you.
Yeah. And that's actually a good point, Harrison, because in that moment, they don't care what their monthly rate was.
Right. Right. Exactly. What they've paid for it doesn't matter, but right now they have to have it.
Right.
Yeah. I love that. That's great. So let's flip the tables a little bit. So what would you say has been the most difficult lesson you've learned along the way?
I think the most difficult lesson for me was based around price, like trying not like when I first started out in the industry, I would look at a premium, I would do the right thing for a client, make sure I've got everything covered. I would look at the price and I'd say, oh, that seems too high, or like, oh, I wouldn't pay that. They call that like selling from your own wallet. I don't know if you've heard
Hmm.
that expression before,
No, I
but
have, but it makes
it's
sense.
like, yeah, like you don't ever want to sell by your own wallet. Cause like I would always push myself to bring that proposal to the client. And like there are times when they didn't take it. It was too expensive. But there have been times also when the person said, this is way more than I'm paying, but this is way more coverage than I have. And it makes sense to me now that you've explained it why I should have this. So I think the hardest lesson for me was shying away from price and not sort of getting in my own head about it.
So do you think people shy away from price in that instance because they're afraid of, missing the expectation of the consumer or losing the sale, or just because they're surprised by what it looks like?
Both of the first two,
Okay.
definitely. And that's something I've coached new agents on all the time is the price is what it is. Like, I mean, we'll double check. We'll definitely drill down, go through it, make sure we've got all our discounts possible on it. And, quoting systems from any carrier are very nuanced. It takes a lot
Mm.
to make sure that every possible discount has been found. Um, but yeah, no, agents will get tied up in the fact that it seems too high or that like Geico might be less like, and they don't want to lose a sale, which I get. I mean,
Yeah.
we all have to make money. We all got to eat, pay the mortgage, pay the rent, whatever it may be. But that's definitely something. And that wasn't, it's very common. It's not, unique to my experience. Pretty much every agent that I've ever trained has had the same thing in their first couple of years of like, oh, this is too high, maybe I should leave the umbrella coverage off, or, what have you, or maybe, they don't need all these endorsements on the home. I want to be competitive, like, but people will often think that before actually like presenting. And oftentimes, when you present the products and the proposal to cover somebody's risks, like accurately, they'll either one, understand why it's important and then price is no longer an issue, or two, it turns out that you weren't even that the agent wasn't that far off and the rest of the market is about the same. So it's getting over the fear of price, I think, for a lot of insurance agents, and that's definitely something I had to learn in my career.
Yeah, that's a great point, and probably very true in a lot of industries where you provide a competitive quote, you don't know what the other competitors are, and you're always wondering where you fit and if it's gonna be good enough. All right, what would you say is the one piece of advice you wish you had gotten when you got started?
Ooh, that's a good one. It would probably be similar to what I was like. I wish somebody had told me right off the bat what I eventually came to learn, which is quote everybody as though it's your own mother or father.
Yeah, makes sense. If you're doing the right thing, you're gonna win some, you're gonna lose some, but if you're doing the right thing, that has a way of coming back around and taking care of you.
Absolutely, and that is what it's the simplest way to explain that. That philosophy, and that's what I tell new agents that I train is just quote this person like it's a family member. Yeah, and I do wish somebody had told me that right off the bat. I had good training at Farmers,
Mhm.
but as a new agency owner back in the day, I got some good training, but I sort of had to figure things out on my own. I didn't start out working under another agent, like as an agent in somebody else's agency, so had to sort of figure that out on my own. So yeah, that's probably something I wish that somebody had told me right off the bat. Also, I wish earlier in my career somebody had told me, You don't have to live and die with every sale. And I'm sure this applies to you guys too, right?
Yeah,
Like
I love that.
you can't kill yourself if you do, over, like, you can't lose sleep and just like beat yourself up over losing, a sale. It hurts, but you got to move on to the next one, keep your chin up, etc. And that's probably not uncommon either in sales. Like, that's probably something all salespeople of any industry, wish that somebody had told them right off the bat. Like, more sales will come. Like, you just can't like get in your head about it.
Yeah, no, I love that point because it really does. You'll see insurance agents, real estate agents, they go through a little bit of a dry spell or things are a little quiet. And the feeling is like it's the end of the world. And rather than going deeper and building more relationships and providing more value, oftentimes they will almost clam up and internalize the issue rather than continue to just go through the actions every day that got them to where they were. And it's, funny. It's funny how people will hit a string of success and then potentially even just fall off, and how devastating it feels to them when in reality
Mhm.
they're so close to the next big breakthrough.
And it can be a self-fulfilling prophecy too.
Yeah, that mindset is tough to break. You've got to have some sort of mechanism in your life you can go to get rid of those feelings and go back to where you were feeling success.
That goes back to what I was saying earlier too. I think consistency has been like a big thing for me in my career. Like, I might get beat up, but I'm going to get up the next morning and buckle my chin strap and get right back in it. And I think that's probably, a good indicator of successful people of, any sales industry.
Yeah, in past podcasts, we've heard the same from other people where that is to them, they continue to come in every day and they perform the same actions. They do the boring stuff
Hmm.
to continue to move the business forward. Good day, raining, snowing, cold, good mood, bad mood, doesn't matter. Like they continue to go back to the things that got them there, and just make it such a habit, such a thing of consistency that they don't let themselves get into that headspace or that funk. They just continue to plow ahead. All right, Jeff. So before we let you go, um, if somebody wants to get in touch with you to either talk more about your story, learn more about the farmer's products, or even get a quote, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
Best way to get in touch with me would be either by our office phone, which is 207-210-8909, or I can be reached by email at jlee18@farmersagent.com. So that's JLEE 18@farmersagent.com. Farmers plural, agent singular. I wish they gave me my old email address too from 12 years ago. I didn't have the 18 behind it. It was just J Lee at Farmers Agent like 12 years ago. I asked him if I could get it back. No dice.
That's too bad. That'd been nice. Well, it's been great having you, Jeff. Appreciate the time. Love the product. I think you guys are doing a great job there building this out, and looking forward to checking in with you again in the future.
Sounds good. Thanks.